First of all, of course, we want to thank the people and the founder and the supporters of this Library 2.0 conference. We couldn't do this without them, and it's such an amazing opportunity to be here, sitting in my living room and connecting with you all over the world. So thank you all so much. And I'm going to turn on permissions, and we're going to see where everybody is from. And then I'm going to go ahead and move on. So you're joining a session that we're calling Foiling Fake News with Fourth Graders. My name is Kim Wilkins, and I'm here with
Sarah Henry.
And we both teach at St. Anne's Belfield School in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's a private pre-K to 12 institution, and I teach computer science K through 8.
And I'm the school librarian for grades K through 8.
And so we thankfully do a lot of collaboration, which is a lot of fun, but also I think is very important for the kids because there's so many things that we both care about in our fields that intersect, and one of those is addressing digital literacy and media literacy. And so, Sarah, you came up to me wanting to do this unit. What was the idea behind that?
As an information specialist, I was finding myself falling down the rabbit hole of fake news and not understanding which stories were trustworthy. And I realized that if it was something that I was struggling with, then it was probably something that my students were struggling with as well. And as K through 8 educators, we have the unique opportunity to work with students not only once they're active social media users to try to help them understand the tools they're using, but also before they begin using social media independently. So I thought that if we could reach them before they start logging into Facebook and Instagram and Googling on their own, then we could make them prepared for that step before they even started, which would make them educated users from the start.
And I think the other thing that I think we bring to the table is that we're both very active on social media. So I'm very active on Twitter, and
I'm learning.
But you're also active on Instagram and Facebook. So we have sort of that authentic experience that we can also share with the students. So the reason we wanted to bring this to you is we wanted to share our experience, also get feedback from you all of ideas that you've tried, and how can we build this teaching kit and idea out into the world. So that's why we're bringing this to you today. So here's some of the reasons that we thought of for why we wanted to do this.
We really wanted to do this as a preventative kind of lesson. We wanted to help our students to gain awareness of the issues before they were heavy social media users. I noticed with my fourth graders this year specifically, they were very political. They were so in tune with what was happening in the world around them. They were discussing politics, which made me think that they were probably starting to research it. So we wanted to make sure that they were prepared to research and to understand before they started using social media on their own. At St. Anne's Belfield, we've noticed that students most of the time get cell phones and laptops and social media accounts right around 5th grade, 6th grade, so we thought that if we approached them in 4th grade and gave them some confidence and really helped them to hone those skills, that they would be ready. So we wanted to build on students' existing knowledge of evaluating resources and put it in a new context. Our students understand how to look at a website, to check the author, to see when it was last edited, to look for ads. They've learned these skills when they were younger, but it can be tricky to take those skills and put them in the new context of live, constantly updating news, especially now that news is being made to look very real, even if it's not. That's the way people are making money. So we wanted to build on their existing knowledge of evaluating those resources, but put it in the new context of evaluating news online. We also wanted to focus on new ideas, keeping them from judging quickly, and of course not being distracted or convinced by their personal opinion, and understanding that some people create realistic looking fake news for a living. They do it on purpose, they work very hard, and are very talented with making websites that look real, even if they're not. We wanted to teach them to fact check in real time versus fact checking for historical sources. And we wanted to work together to introduce building blocks of web pages like HTML tags and help them to understand how that fit into the picture as well.
So what we did is we basically broke this down into 3 weeks worth of activities. And we'll go in more depth for each of these weeks, but week 1 was something called Cracking the Code, week 2 was Snap Judgment, and week 3 was X-ray Goggles.
We saw students for 60 minutes for each lesson. They had a short period where they were checking out books or reading, but most of the time was spent in the computer lab working.
So for the first week, we did something called Cracking the Code, and this is actually a tool from Mozilla. And if you haven't seen Mozilla's Web Literacy Map, I would highly recommend it. We do a lot of activities based on this literacy map. And behind that map are all these activities that you can do with your students. So it's just a wealth of resources. I'm also part of the Mozilla community, and so I just find it to be such an important part of my life, because if I have a question or I want to learn how to do something else, or I want to see if somebody's already created it, I can go to this community and find it. So I just highly recommend using this resource. And this particular resource is getting the readers to, investigators to find out whether Krakens are real. What were the 3 things?
Real, fake, or something in between.
Right. So it was, there was not a cut and dried answer, which we also liked about this activity. I created a symbol project, which is again a resource from Mozilla that has all the step-by-step instructions for everything we're going through. So that's the URL you see at the bottom there if you're wanting to try this out yourself. But really this activity, we just pretty much did it as it was already written, so we didn't have to create anything for this.
It was a great introduction to the unit for our students because it got them really thinking about the sources they were using, and because it made them realize that we were serious about kind of throwing them in without a life jacket. They saw that we really were just going to let them go, and however they used their time was however they used their time, and it really prepared them for the next 2 weeks and what was coming.
So along with this comes something called a legitometer, which I think is a much more entertaining and engaging way for the kids to think about resources. So I thought that was another great tool that was part of this learning environment. So that was week 1. Week 2, we were inspired by another teacher who did this game with his kids. And he wrote about it in Vox, and again, we have a link to that article in this next step. But we called our activity Snap Judgment. And what we really wanted to do is get the kids having to make really fast decisions about whether something was coming from a reliable source or was even true or false. And because the way things are coming at you on social media is, you can't keep up with it. We're on information overload. We're making snap judgments all the time about trusted sources and what we think is true or not. And so we just wanted to get the kids already sort of experiencing what that's like. And so we kind of threw them to the deep end.
I love this game because I feel like as teachers we're constantly asking our students to slow down. But Kim and I understood that in some contexts they're not going to. And so instead of asking them not to make a snap judgment, we decided to embrace it and to say, you're going to make a snap judgment, so we better teach you how to do it right. And there was this great moment with this game where we didn't give them a lot of instructions. We said, we're going to be putting a headline up here. You have 3 minutes to figure out if it's true or if it's false. Go. And we set a timer for 3 minutes, and we put on the first headline, and a 4th grader turned to me with this panicked look on her face, and she said, what do we do now? And I said, I don't know, but you have 3 minutes to figure it out. And I went and I sat down, and she stared at me for a few seconds, and then she turned to her partner and she said, well, start Googling. She started because she knew that no one was going to be giving her any help, and it was up to her. I think it was really empowering for them to know that they had to do it on their own.
So basically this game was headlines that were both real and fake that we got from different sources. Some of the fake ones were from The Onion, which you really have to vet those before you put them up. And Snopes and things like that. And some of them were very tricky. So I think the first one was about do spiders eat the same the same amount of food in a year as humans do.
Something along those lines.
And so very also engaging questions. And it was really interesting to watch the kids because, like I said, we didn't say go to this site to verify it. they went down, and some went down rabbit holes.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of YouTube rabbit holes, a lot of, I wouldn't say Wikipedia was a rabbit hole necessarily, but you know, going there. Other places.
Google image searching.
Oh yeah, a lot of image searching. So
yeah.
But we decided not to interrupt that, and that was one of the things we experienced with this, is kind of letting the kids really try to figure out on their own how they were going to suss things out. And because the game went so fast, we started with 3 minutes with the first few questions, and down to 2, and then down to 1. And I think by the end, they started realizing what sources they were getting more reliable information from, because they were seeing which things, you know, seeing what other kids were doing and how they were. We had them stand up if they thought it was true or false, and then they would see how others were doing their searches.
And it started with the room pretty split. They would argue over whether it was true or it was false, and we would have one student behind each argument give the reason why. What about this website convinced you? What made you think that this was legitimate? And by the end of our 60 minutes, they were pretty much unanimous. They agreed. They also picked up on the sources when we told them whether it was true or false. We told them where we got the headline, and they picked up very quickly on the sources that we trusted and the sources that we used, and started going straight for those instead of Googling and trusting whatever resources popped up first, which was very cool to see.
I think we also had some really interesting discussions about opinions and biases and things that they just assumed were true because they had an opinion about it. And how that comes into social media, and that plays right into social media, because social media is all about sort of reconfirming your own biases.
There's a lot of, why is that true? Because I know it. And then you'd have to follow up with, well, why? And that's tricky.
So the final week was using something called X-ray goggles. Again, this is a tool from Mozilla, and it's really an amazing tool. What you do is you just put it on your bookmark bar, and when you click on it, you can hover over different parts of a website, and it's like you're seeing an X-ray of it. It's like you're seeing what is the building blocks, the bones of the website. So you can see where there are tags, HTML tags, that make a title, that put an image on the screen, that put paragraphs, that put links, that do all these things. And of course, I feel part of digital literacy is understanding how the technology is built. And so it's very important for me that students understand that anybody can do this. Like, they can create websites. Anybody can create a website. This is, you know, not too difficult. And so understanding that anybody can do it, and so people are doing it that are doing it for nefarious reasons, but anybody can do it, and they can do it. And we also had some really interesting discussions about remixing and hacking, and when is it a good thing and when is it a bad thing. And I would say that, you know, some of our discussions were actually more interesting and impactful than, you know, the work itself. Is having those discussions with the students and having them realize, you know, these kind of things. And of course, also not always having the answer. Right, so even some of these things are like, well, what is the right answer? Well, you know, we don't know. We might have to continue to research. So I think a lot of these 3 weeks were us being a bit vulnerable, I would say, and being able to give up control and let the students really try to figure things out for themselves. So this is an example of one of the X-ray goggles. So we had them remix a site, Mozilla, I believe was a site. And so there were real headlines and real images, and then we had either, you know, pick a different title for the image or bring a different image in. And this is just one example of the image was part of the original website, and then obviously the text wasn't. And I think something we added at the very end, which worked so well, was a gallery walk around. After they had done their remixing, we had them silently just go around and view what the other students had done, and then had a discussion about, you know, could they tell which ones were fake? Why were they fake? You know, they were making some of the same mistakes, exaggerating things, misspelling things, you know, some of the same things that we have them look for in fake news, you know, were the same mistakes they were making. So I think that really helped them make that connection.
And if you look closely at the image that we chose, the source for this picture they changed to Yo Mama, and it has infinity lights. And so these were things that tipped them off. And so not only were they looking at the HTML piece, they were learning about how a website was made, but it taught them to think critically about reading and about writing. How can I write so that it looks legitimate? How can I read critically so that I understand the person that is writing this might be an expert or they might not be, and this has tipped me off. So those conversations that came after the gallery walks were so valuable because it gave them time to reflect on not only what we had learned in the past 3 weeks, but specifically what they had seen and what they had learned about the way news is represented, the way it's presented to them.
And I would say this week especially, I think, can be intimidating if others want to try it because, you know, I teach computer science, so HTML is not a big deal to me. But I think, Sarah, you would agree, the tool is very easy to use, and the kids will grasp onto it like that. And then you find your experts in the room, the other students who can help anybody who's struggling. But I really think that this is a low-cost way to get into sharing what websites are all about.
And finding those experts in the room is key. I think we did that all 3 weeks. Not only because it makes the students feel like, it makes them feel empowered, makes them feel in charge, but they're helping each other and they're learning through mastery and through teaching, and it really adds a special energy to the room when they feel like they're in charge and they're teaching.
So we've already talked about some of these things we learned. It was really interesting, I think, challenging for us to watch the students go down their rabbit holes, but in the end, it was well worth it because I think only then did they understand, oh, maybe YouTube isn't always the very first thing I should go to, or different rabbit holes they went down.
And that was challenging mostly the first day, not only because the Kraken is a really cool creature that they want to watch YouTube videos of, but they learned really quickly. There were students on the first day that spent much of their time on YouTube and didn't finish their worksheet, and they were really bummed that they had not finished and that they had missed out, that they hadn't filled out their Legitimeters and didn't kind of get a vote in the final say of whether the Kraken was real. And the second week, we didn't see very much of that. They self-regulated really quickly. They realized if I end up down this rabbit hole, I'm going to miss out, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah. You know, I think we could have always used some more time for discussion after each experience. So that's always a challenge, is to find those times. But again, this shouldn't be, for us, this won't be, you know, this 3-week event, but we'll keep reinforcing it throughout the year. Gray areas are challenging to teach. So yeah, when you're not the one, and you know, again, with computer science, I'm used to being in the gray area because technology is changing so fast, I can't possibly keep up with it. And so I just have to, you know, be willing to introduce and then let things go. But I think, you know, especially with subject areas, you think that you need to be an expert, and there's just no way to do that now with so much information coming at us all at once. And then just beginning to realize all the biases, the students beginning to have that acknowledgement of, oh, you know, I just think this is true. I haven't actually verified it's true. Because again, with historical facts, you know, a lot of things that they do for research papers and stuff, they're learning new things, so they think more about it. But there's so many things with social media that they just think they already know. So that was an interesting thing to go through.
And in a historical context, it's easy to say it happened, it's fact, that's finished. Because it's in the past, we have it, we know what happened, we have a record. Things that are happening now, and students having to embrace that sometimes there is no right answer, or sometimes there is no way to know 100%, was challenging for a lot of them. And so their bias is coming into it, sometimes their bias is coming out of it because they couldn't let go of what they thought they knew and didn't know how to shake that.
So now we'd love to take questions. We have just a few minutes. And again, we'd love to share these resources. We'd love to hear what you're doing to teach web literacy, especially at this young age before social media engagement begins.